fragile when frying, and if you crack the shell in the early stages of cooking, you're in for a big, sputtery, scary mess. So I reluctantly have to recommend the old-fashioned flour and egg dance. But something I can wholeheartedly recommend are these fries. And the French was good, but I really wanted to try that green Cajun kick-ass stuff. Guess we'll save that for the Tater Tots episode.
Let me go to Big Head Joe's for you. They have the most insane burritos.
I don't much go for ethnic food.
No, trust me. They have one that's called the Meat Tornado. Literally killed a guy last year.
You had me at Meat Tornado.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, and welcome to the new Binging with Babish kitchen, a sprawling 2-level garden apartment that I have retrofitted into the play place of my dreams. I'll be taking you guys on a proper tour of this space soon so you can see all the new toys and tools that, as you can imagine, I want to keep safe. So it's fitting that this week's sponsor, Simply Safe, is helping me keep my new home secure. Simply Safe is an award-winning home security system with no contracts. It's also super easy to set up. It took me less than an hour to get mine up and running for the new house. Visit simplysafe.com/babish to learn more. Now, before we dig into the Meat Tornado, we must first go back in time to the old apartment, where I enlisted some help from an expert to ensure that this burrito could in fact kill a man.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I understand that you are a doctor of nutrition.
Yes, I'm a medical doctor and I'm what they call a physician nutrition specialist. I'm recognized by the National Board of Physician Nutrition Specialists.
Well, it sounds like they could really use somebody like you in Pawnee, Indiana, because as I understand, it's a very unhealthy.
Ron?
I am submitting this menu from a Pawnee institution, JJ's Diner, home of the world's best breakfast dish, the 4 horse meals of the Eggporcalypse.
Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to this, the final episode of Binging with Babish. To come out of the old kitchen, I'm all moved into the new spot and have already filmed the subject of next week's episode, the Meat Tornado. But for now, we're taking a look at the 4 horse meals of the Eggporcalypse, described in Leslie Knope's book as an astonishing onslaught of protein that includes a 12-egg scramble, bacon, sausage, ham, hash browns, chicken fried steak, and a giant tower of buttermilk pancakes. First thing we can start with is the flapjacks. This is a factory standard buttermilk pancake recipe. If you want to see how to make it, click the link in the upper right hand corner right now. Whisk it to a lumpy, smooth consistency, cover with plastic wrap, and fridge for up to 24 hours. Plenty of time to address the many other horse meals of this Eggporcalypse. If we consult the book Pawnee, the Greatest Town in America, you can see that there are 2 different iterations of hash browns, a mountain of scattered and shredded hash browns, and 5 deep-fried hash brown patties. So we're going to start with the patties by peeling and chopping 5 medium russets into 1-inch chunks, immediately dunking them into a cool water bath so as they do not discolor. This is also going to help wash off some of the excess starch, which is going to give us crispier potatoes. So go ahead and drain these, and then we're going to pat them dry on a few layers of paper towels. And then we're following a method for tater tots from master of all things crispy, J. Kenji Lopez Alt, who calls for the potatoes to be par-fried in 350° Fahrenheit vegetable oil for 3 to 4 minutes until lightly browned and cooked through. Once nicely blonde around the edges, we're going to fish them out and drain them on a paper towel set in a rim baking sheet. Then we're going to let them cool completely at room temperature about 20 minutes before processing them into a chunky paste. This fry again process is going to keep the interiors of our hash browns light and flaky rather than gummy and dense. So once they're nice and cool, go ahead and load them into your favorite food processor and hit it with 8 1-second pulses until all the potatoes have been broken down into little tiny chunks. Do this in batches to ensure that the potatoes are processed evenly, and fish out any extra large chunks with your hands and your human intelligence. Once everybody's all processed together, we can season and form into patties. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar, a few twists of freshly ground black pepper, a hefty pinch or about 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and a tablespoon of potato starch, which is going to help give our hash browns structure and meaning. Once evenly mixed together, it's time to start forming them into patties. Hash browns typically are sort of oblong oval pucks, designed to be quickly and easily mashed into your mouth hole. Now we're going to freeze these bad boys for about an hour until they are frozen solid. This is both going to make it easier to retrieve and deep fry them, and it's also going to crystallize the potatoes' molecular structure, making them more tender. Back into some 375°F oil they go for about 5 minutes until deeply golden brown and crisp. Drain them on a wire rack, and there you have it. Beautiful, crispy, airy, flaky hash browns, which we're going to keep warm in a low oven while we make the million other things that we're making. The most excited for which I am is chicken fried steak, which starts with one of the cheapest and toughest cuts around, top sirloin, which we're going to gently coax into being tender using a whole bunch of little tiny sharp knives. This is a meat tenderizer used for making cube steak, a steak filled with hundreds if not thousands of little tiny incisions, rendering even the most impossibly tough cuts of beef butter knife soft. After many spirited stomps, they look very much the same, but look more closely and you will see they have been bespeckled with lots and lots of little holes. And so now they're ready for breading. In my dry breading station, I have 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon each kosher salt, and cayenne pepper, tiny whisked until homogeneous. Then on the wetter side of things, I have 1 large egg, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and a half teaspoon of baking soda, which I'm going to tiny whisk into a slurry. Before tiny whisking in, 1 cup of buttermilk. This is going to give our breading a nice, light, airy texture. Once everybody on both sides is homogeneous, we're ready to start dipping our steaks. And since we're obviously not trying to skimp on the cholesterol, we are, of course, double battering. That means taking a prolonged dip in the dry stuff, shaking off any excess, heading over for a swim in the wet stuff, making sure that every crack and cranny is comprehensively coated, and heading back over into the dry, creating a bulky, craggy exterior not unlike that of fried chicken. But fun fact, that is actually not where chicken fried steak gets its name. A known foodie and longtime Francophile, Thomas Jefferson, is actually credited with, I'm just kidding, it totally got its name from being a steak fried like chicken, which is exactly what we're going to do with it. Into some 350°F oil it goes, where it shall fry about 4 to 5 minutes per side until deeply golden brown and crisp all over. Use extreme caution when flipping, because if you crack the shell, you're gonna have a bad time. Drain it on a wire rack, keep it warm in a low oven, and rinse and repeat with any remaining steaks. And then the very key to the deliciousness of chicken fried steaks lies in the bottom of this pot. That's right, remember all the brown sloppy gold from the KFC episode? All this deep fried gunk is the key to making delicious gravy. So we are reserving as much as possible in the bottom of the pan, along with about 2 to 3 tablespoons worth of leftover fry oil, into which we're going to dump half an onion finely minced. We're going to saute that onion and all that brown sloppy goodness for 2 to 3 minutes until it's starting to soften and turn translucent around the edges. Add 2 or 3 crushed cloves of garlic and continue to saute over a medium heat for about 30 seconds until fragrant, and then we're adding a 1/4 cup of flour as our eventual thickener. Mix that in with the vegetables and let it cook for about 2 to 3 minutes until the raw flour smell dissipates. Then we are slowly whisking in about a 1/2 cup of beef stock and the star of the show, 1 cup of light cream. Add it slowly at first, whisking constantly to prevent lumps. Add the rest and whisk frequently over medium-high heat until bubbling and thickened. Once it starts to bubble, make sure you lower the heat so as to not scorch the sauce. When it's just about done, we're going to season with kosher salt, freshly ground pepper, and an optional sprinkle of cayenne pepper. We want it reduced and thickened to the point that it can easily coat the back of a spoon. We're also using a spoon so we can give it a little taste. Let's see how this is. Oh my god, that's good. Don't worry if it seems a little thin, it's going to thicken as it cools, but we want to keep it warm until we're ready to serve. Last bit of prep we gotta do is shred our potatoes for our scattered fried hash browns. To make these, we are peeling and shredding 3 large russets directly into a bowl of cool water. This again is both going to remove excess starch and prevent them from discoloring too quickly. Set those aside, and just like the very first episode out of this kitchen, we're gonna finish on the flat top. There is no other way that a breakfast of this magnitude could be constructed. Once sizzling hot, we're gonna treat the whole surface with a little drizzle of canola oil, just to make sure that nobody gets too sticky, and then it's time to commence with the onslaught of protein. I'm starting with what looked to me like a pound of fried bacon, fried up extra crisp the way that I imagine Ron likes it. I can just imagine him saying something about how floppy bacon is for frequent criers and bedwetters. We've also got 3 large slabs of ham that we're just gonna heat up and get a nice crust on. Once everybody's nicely browned and fried up, it's time to evacuate them onto a plate, which we're gonna keep warm in a low oven. As we move on to phase 2, the sausage and pancake phase. I've got some regular plain Jane breakfast sausage here, next to which I'm going to begin to dollop large buttermilk pancakes. These are going to fry about 3 minutes on their first side until they begin to turn pale and blistery around the edges. And let us all take a moment to remember that these are all being fried in bacon fat. Once the pancakes are flipped, they get another 2 to 3 minutes on the opposing side before being stacked on a plate and repeating until we got no pancake batter left. Pancakes finished, it's time to get this off of the spatula here. Come on, dude, let's go. Join your pancakey brethren. And last but not least, we have our scattered hash browns and 12 egg scramble. The potatoes we're going to place in a clean kitchen towel and just squeeze the absolute dickens out of, making sure that they are super dry to facilitate effective browning. But before they are headed over to the cooktop, we're going to lightly season them with some kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. Just the hits. Mix gently to distribute throughout and load them up onto an oiled flat top. Then, after flattening out with a large metal spatula into a potato patty, we're going to cover them with a bowl while frying on the first side. This is going to help the potatoes cook more evenly throughout. Then, once the sausage has been removed onto the keep it warm plate, we're going to dedicate the new flat top real estate to the 12 egg scramble, which is exactly what it sounds like, 12 eggs scrambled, but we're doing ours in bacon and sausage fat. Just sort of scramble them around there, and once you have some nice, big, soft, pillowy, eggy curds, remove them onto a plate just in time to realize that you didn't time out your hash brown very well. But just pretend that you're at JJ's and you have heat lamps or something. Flip once nicely browned, cooking for 4 to 5 minutes per side. Once it's ready to go, flop it atop your hash brown pucks and get ready to serve. Everybody else is waiting, so why don't we go join the party? And what a party it is. Thousands of calories and hundreds of grams of cholesterol on parade alongside a single glass of orange juice and a single cup of coffee. I'm about to dig right into this sucker, but first I just want to say a few words.
Well, folks, this is it. I'm not in focus, am I? Hang on a second. Well, folks, that's it. That is the last meal to come out of the Soho kitchen. I've lived here for 2+ some odd years. I fell in love here. I wrote a cookbook here. I lived a whole lot of life here. And it's pretty crazy to say goodbye. Oh, I forgot the sausage gravy. Hang on. You mustn't forget the sausage gravy. Okay, that's better. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm feeling a lot of things saying goodbye. I'm feeling scared, but like Ron Swanson says, when I eat, it is the food that is scared. So I'm going to try to adopt that outlook. I'm feeling excited because I've got a lot of big new plans for the new space, new shows, new people, new everything. And I'm also feeling pretty sad. Like, you know, this place has been my home for longer than most places have ever been my home. Like Ron Swanson says, again, there is no sadness that breakfast food cannot cure. So I'm gonna live by those words, and I'm gonna dig into this breakfast food right now. Oop, this needs butter. Boop. Oh, hold on, I got something to... My last splash of Lagavulin 16. Last little bit. Oh, I spilled it on the eggs. That's okay. Okay, it's not a little bit. That's a lot of bit. But whatever, we're celebrating tonight. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I owe everything I have to you. I owe everything more than I ever dreamed I would have. I owe it all to you. And like I said in my book, I'm going to spend the rest of my life working to earn everything that you've given me. So here's to you guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I'm going to devour this breakfast food right now. Particularly this chicken fried steak. Because I've been thinking about this all f***ing day. Hell yeah, dude. This guy's going to the Clean Plate Club tonight.
The Burger Dinner for Breakfast Burger Combo. It tastes amazing. What's in it? Who cares? How many calories? Shut up. It's awesome. Put it in your body or you're a nerd.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week, in the first episode of a Parks and Rec trilogy, we are taking a look at the fabled Paunch Burger, specifically the greaseball extravaganza known as the dinner for breakfast combo. So, thankfully, this episode is sponsored by Thrive Market, an online membership-based market on a mission to make healthy living easy and affordable for everyone. Members save an average of $32 on every order, so be sure to sign up at the link in the video description. I have a feeling I'm going to be especially thankful for this sponsorship because even by my most conservative estimates, this burger and fry combo is going to clock in at around 2,400 calories. In no small part thanks to the chili cheese fries. So first up, I'm making a very basic beef chili. Saute some onions for about 3 minutes, add some crushed garlic, 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, teaspoon of sweet paprika, and a teaspoon of oregano. Saute 1 to 2 minutes or until fragrant, and now I've got my pound of beef from Food and Stuff. Ooh, let's get rid of that beef bandage. Break up the beef and saute for 5 to 7 minutes or until no longer pink. Then we're adding a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes and maybe a quarter cup of water, bringing to a bare simmer, partially covering and allowing to simmer over low heat for an hour to an hour and a half, until it's nice and thick and all the flavors have melded and it strikes you as chili fry ready. As always, we're going to wait for the chili to finish cooking before tasting for seasoning and adding kosher salt and freshly ground pepper to taste. This can be made up to 3 days ahead of time, but for now I'm just going to cover it and keep it warm because we got lots of other stuff to make. First up, the cheese sauce, whose method we are deriving from J. Kenji Lopez Alt. Into a small saucepan we are combining 1 can of evaporated milk and 8 ounces of grated sharp cheddar that we have tossed together with 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Maybe a dash or 2 of hot sauce if you want to be taken seriously. Go ahead and cook this over medium heat, stirring constantly until it has thickened into a cheese sauce. Set that aside and keep it warm while we contend with what looked to me like onion rings stacked betwixt the hamburger patties. So I am slicing 2 large Spanish onions into big old thick steak-like slices, separating them into rings and spreading them out on a parchment-lined baking sheet, again in a technique adapted from the one and only J. Kenji Lopez Alt. These onions are headed into the freezer until frozen solid at least 1 hour. Not only is this going to break down their cellular structure so they become tender, it's also going to allow us to very easily peel off their inner membrane. After thawing in a bowl of tepid water, these membranes are the leading cause of onion ring coating related slippage. So by removing them, you will have tender onion rings.
Carol killed her husband.
But whatever you do not throw away your onion water. This is going to be integral, and I'm just kidding, you can toss it. Especially because we need the bowl to make our beer batter. Into said bowl goes 1 cup of cake flour, half a cup of cornstarch, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, half teaspoon of baking soda, and an optional shake of paprika. Tiny whisk to a state of homogeneity, and then it is time to introduce our liquids to the party. 3/4 of a cup of beer and a 1/4 cup of vodka. Let's go ahead and pour it on in there. Oh no, wait, I'm right-handed. We gotta switch this around. Sorry, sometimes I forget. Anyway, we are whisking constantly while we add the beer and vodka mixture. In the end, we want the batter to have the consistency of paint. Over on the stovetop, we are heating 1 quart each vegetable and peanut oil to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Once our target temperature is reached, it's time to dip the onion rings in the beer batter, let the excess drip off, and drop them into the awaiting fry oil, frying for about 1 minute per side, before evacuating onto a wire rack set in a rim baking sheet. If your onion rings are sputtering and spattering too much, make sure that they are super dry. And once everybody is fried, make sure to season them with kosher salt while they are still warm, and keep them that way in a 200 degree Fahrenheit oven whilst we make our final burger preparations. First, on a lightly oiled cast iron skillet set over medium-high heat, we are going to perform the integral act of toasting our buns. Buns toasted, we're going to crank the heat up to high and introduce our burgers to the party. 3 third-pound patties, seasoned generously with kosher salt and freshly ground pepper, and allowed to sear undisturbed for 3 to 5 minutes on their first side, until a deep brown crust forms and they lift freely off the cast iron. You can see I placed a little dimple in the center of each patty to prevent these from turning into softballs, before flipping and allowing to cook for an additional 2 to 3 minutes. Then we're killing the heat, topping each with a slice of yellow American cheese, adding a dash of water to the pan for some cheese melting steam, and covering with a cloche. And now finally we're ready to assemble. It appears as though the burger starts with a pathetic leaf of lettuce, followed by the first burger, an onion ring, and a squirt of ketchup. ketchup, then it's just a matter of repeating this process 2 more times. It's during this time that we can think about the 2,400 calories that we're about to consume. Oh yeah, there's a fried egg on top, make that 2,475. This is, after all, the dinner for breakfast combo. Next up, we are proudly piling chili and cheese sauce atop our french fries, adding our top bun, and folks, I think we've done it. This is the Paunch Burger dinner for breakfast combo. Let's go ahead and use some magic to clear the table off. There we go. And as much as I want to try to just take a bite out of this thing, I think we got to get a cross section. So I'm going to do my best to not absolutely destroy this thing as I cut it in half. And as you can see, the ketchup between each layer was a little inadvisable because it ends up looking like blood, but whatever, I think it only adds to the sheer carnage of the occasion. And surprise, surprise, it's really quite good. I am, and always have been, and continue to be, a supporter of onion rings on burgers. And look, it's just dripping grease and covered in cheese and chili, exactly how I imagined it. But to be honest, you guys, I don't think I can induct this into the Clean Plate Club. My blood feels thick and syrupy. Let's see if we can use the ingredients in this delivery from Thrive Market to make Chris Traeger's famous salad dressing.
Oh, Linda, in case you're interested, I brought my own dressing.
You really can't be doing that.
Oh, this is the last time, I promise. It contains extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of lemon, and a hint of turmeric.
Sounds great.
Okay, I'm definitely ready to feel healthier. In a small bowl, we're going to combine the juice of 1 large lemon, an equal parts of high-quality olive oil, and a teaspoon of turmeric. Better make it 2 teaspoons. This stuff is supposed to have great anti-inflammatory qualities. And after that burger combo, I feel inflamed. Simply tiny whisk until it forms a thick, creamy emulsion that you can pour over the salad of your choice. I'm going with Chris's favorite food, plain lettuce. Let's give it a try, and the salad could use some other stuff in it, but the dressing is really, really good. And I can already feel it making me healthier, so thanks again to the sponsor of today's episode, Thrive Market, for helping me offset some of the damage done by the Paunch Food Group.
Thrive Market provides its members with thousands of the highest quality, healthy, and sustainable products in groceries, supplements, home products, and much more. You can easily shop by 70+ diets and values like keto, gluten-free, non-GMO, and more.
If you're concerned about the environmental effects of having your groceries delivered, Thrive Market has you covered there as well. Your groceries will be delivered with carbon-neutral shipping methods from their zero-waste warehouses. Head to the link in the video description to sign up for Thrive Market membership and take the guided shopping quiz to get a personalized shopping list and product recommendations that are tailored to you.
When you join today through my link, you will receive a free gift up to a $22 value.
My secret ingredient, sodium pentothal, coma in half a minute. Pancuronium stops her breathing, and then peace.
You finally brought me the perfect pie.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a crack at the perfect key lime pie from Dexter. A pie for which we're going to need a cocktail of euthanizing chemicals and some key limes, both pretty hard to get a hold of. Much like true champagne has to originate in Champagne, France, true key limes must be grown in the Florida Keys. Most of the key limes you find at the grocery store are going to be imported and are apparently significantly more bitter than the genuine article. But I don't know, tastes like lime to me. Just make sure if you use conventional limes to add a little bit of lime oil, and if you're using key limes to buy a whole lot. Because to make a single key lime pie, we must yield 2/3 of a cup of key lime juice, which could take anywhere from 15 to 30 key limes. Once you've got all your juice juiced, go ahead and set that aside, because first things first, we gotta make us a graham cracker crust. If you want to make your own graham crackers from scratch, check out the link in the upper right hand corner right now. But honestly, I really don't think you're gonna taste the difference. Both homemade and store-bought graham crackers are plenty bland. Either way, we're placing them in oh my god, I did not know that food processors could do that. Make sure your food processor is off before securing the lid, and we're processing about 1.5 packs worth of graham crackers to a fine graham cracker dust. Then once done and dusted, we're gonna measure out about 200 grams worth, to which we're going to add about 40 grams of powdered sugar, or you can use regular sugar, just make sure to measure out the same amount, and a big old pinch of kosher salt before tiny whisking until thoroughly combined, making sure to crush any bits of powdered sugar. Then we're adding 100 grams of melted unsalted butter to the party. We're gently mixing this together using a spatula fingy combo until the graham cracker crumbs are evenly saturated and they keep their shape when pressed together but are still crumbly like wet sand. This means that they're ready to dump into an unprepared pie plate, where we're going to gently press them into all the corners, press them up the sides of the plate using our fingers, and maybe a nice flat-bottomed ramekin to make sure that everything is smooth and even and compacted. Then this guy's headed into a 325-degree Fahrenheit oven for 15 minutes before being removed to cool completely on a wire rack. Just enough time to make our key lime curd in this technique, courtesy of King Arthur flour. Into the bowl of a stand mixer goes 3 egg yolks separated from their whites, the zest of 1 large lime or 3 key limes. This is optional, but it's going to amplify the lime flavor without adding any extra bitterness. Then we are affixing wire whisks and beating the egg yolks until... Oh, you gotta plug in the machine, stupid. Beating the egg yolks for about 3 minutes on high speed. During this time, they're going to slightly increase in volume and become nice and thick and ribbony like a hollandaise. Next up, 1 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. This is where both the sweetness and milkiness of this recipe is going to come from. We're beating this together with the egg yolks, this time with the paddle attachment on medium-high speed for about 5 minutes until it's light and pale and slightly thickened. Now, last but decidedly not least, are 2/3 of a cup of key lime juice, which we're going to add while the mixer is running on low and mix until just combined. The acid from the limes should slightly thicken the mixture. Give it a couple folds to make sure that everybody's gotten to know everybody. Cover with plastic wrap and let rest at room temperature for 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, and it looks exactly the same. But during this time, it should have gotten a little thicker, and our graham cracker crust should be cooled completely. So we're going to pour the filling into the prepared crust. Don't worry if it looks a little low, it's going to expand slightly in the oven. Give it a little wiggle to make sure that it's evenly dispersed, and pop it back into a 325-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 25 minutes until set around the edges and registering 145 degrees in the center. Don't stress too much about your temperature hole, you can cover that up once this guy has cooled completely at room temp for about 2 hours. Then to really drive home the cooling concept, we are wrapping in plastic wrap and popping in the fridge for at least 4 hours, ideally overnight. The pie in Dexter was festooned with a decorative piped whipped cream topping. So we're going to mix together a pint of heavy cream, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and a dash of vanilla extract and beat until stiff peaks have been achieved. Dump it into a pastry bag with a fluted tip and begin trying and failing miserably to recreate the pattern seen on the show. I am really bad at decorating things, I like to think it's part of my charm. Then, annoyingly, we are also garnishing with slices of key lime, which I hate because you can't really eat it. And then the savior of bad decorations everywhere, a generous zesting of key lime zest, which will instantly improve your shoddy piping. All there is to do now is cut yourself a generous slice of the perfect key lime pie. Oh, that doesn't look terribly perfect, does it? Nothing a little food styling won't fix. Smooth out the edges, cut off any crumbs, polish the cut side, and look at that. Now that's the perfect key lime pie. All this needs now is a whisper of sodium pentothal and pancuronium. Again, I'm terrible with pies, but I'm guessing no more than 5 or 10 mil. And let's dig in. And I gotta say, this is the perfect key lime pie once you get rid of the stupid lime slice. It is sweet, tart, crunchy, and smooth. And a definitive member of the clean play. I'm gonna take a nap real quick.
Our peanuts jar is totally empty. Wait, I know one other place we can find peanuts. Good thing I still have these peanut plants growing in the windowsill. A little texture never hurt. There we go. This Sunday's gonna taste great.
I don't know, somehow I doubt that. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish. For this week, we're taking a look at SpongeBob's onion, ketchup, and peanut plant sundae. And yes, this is an actual peanut plant that I bought on Etsy. It's too young to have yet yielded any nuts, but I think ultimately that's not going to matter. So for the TV show accurate version, we are weeping as we thinly slice a large Vidalia onion, filling a bowl with our ice cream surrogate, aka a whole bottle of ketchup, scattering our Vidalia onions across the top and leaving plenty of room for our Tennessee red organic heirloom peanut plant. Roots, dirt, and all, as SpongeBob said, a little texture never hurt. Except that eating dirt is a very effective way to give yourself a parasite. I had to Google that, and I came across a lot of articles on the subject, because apparently there's a lot of people out there that like to eat eat dirt. I, however, am not one of them, so I'm going to carefully scoop around the dirt, grab some peanut greens, which are apparently perfectly edible, and here we go. Let's try a bite of SpongeBob's improvised sundae, which I hopefully shouldn't have to tell you is not very good. It's ketchup, onions, and leaves. It's like eating a burger without the bun or the burger. And yes, it did give me rancid breath. So making an edible version of this is going to take some doing. I'm thinking the only way to do it is to make ice creams flavored after the different parts of the sundae. First up, the onions. I have 2 large Vidalia onions that I've halved and thinly sliced, which I'm now going to caramelize. I'm going to start by gently sauteing them over medium-low heat, adding a little kosher salt, freshly ground pepper, and then I'm going to cook them covered, stirring occasionally for about 15 minutes. We just want the onions to soften up, as well as give up a bit of their moisture, but we don't want anything turning brown just yet. Once about 15 minutes have passed and the onions are nice and soft, we're going to remove the cover, increase the heat to medium, and cook, stirring frequently for anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. Add a splash of water and scrape the bottom of the pan as many times as you like until you have some deeply golden brown jammy onions. This stuff is completely delicious and very naturally sweet, so I'm very curious to see what kind of ice cream it's going to make. The next thing I'm curious about, tomato-based ice cream, which is going to be our stand-in for ketchup. I'm going to start by making a tomato jam. I'm cutting little crosses into the bottoms of 1 kilogram of fresh, ripe tomatoes, which we're then going to blanch and peel. In other words, we're dropping the tomatoes 1 or 2 at a time into a pot of boiling water for about 1 minute, or until you start to see the skin split along the sides. We're then fishing them out and dumping them directly into an ice water bath. This is called shocking the tomatoes, and it's going to both halt the cooking process and make the tomatoes easier to peel, which, once everybody's blanched and shocked, we're going to start doing. We're going to gently peel the skins off each tomato, then cut the tomatoes into quarters, cut out their cores, and then cut each quarter into 1-inch pieces. Once your tomatoes are broken down, it's time to scoop them directly into your lap. This is going to make for an efficient, I'm just kidding, there's a saucepan down there. Into a medium saucepan goes our tomatoes, along with about 450 grams of granulated sugar and the juice of half a lemon. We're then going to bring this to a simmer over medium heat, reduce the heat to medium-low, and continue to simmer for about an hour, stirring frequently and occasionally skimming off the orange foam that appears on top. By the end, the mixture should have reduced by about half. Now, to represent the peanut plant, I want something earthy, something grassy, and something peanutty. So I'm going to make a beetroot, matcha, and peanut ice cream. Now, for all of our ice cream flavors, we're going to need a basic custard, same as the one we made for mochi ice cream last week. 4 cups of heavy cream, 2 cups of milk, 1 cup of sugar, and a pinch of kosher salt, brought to a bare simmer over medium heat. Then we're bringing this mixture over to 8 separated egg yolks that we have set in a large heat-proof bowl. Then we're going to very slowly ladle the mixture into the eggs while whisking constantly. This is going to temper the eggs, which is going to prevent them from scrambling in our ice cream. And this ice cream is going to be weird enough without scrambled eggs in it. Once we've added about 1/3 of the heavy cream and milk mixture, we're adding everything back to the pot and whisking constantly over medium heat until it reaches 175 degrees Fahrenheit and becomes thick enough to coat the back of a spoon. Now, into some various containers, I have our different flavorings. Tomato jam on the far left, followed by caramelized onion. Next, some beetroot puree, and last, some creamy peanut butter, about 1/2 cup of each. We are then tiny whisking each of these until they are completely homogeneous. And if you're wondering where the matcha ice cream is, I have some left over from last week that I'll be repurposing. Because, fun fact, you can melt and rechurn ice cream. Well, maybe that's just a fact, I don't know about a fun fact. Either way, every custard is getting covered and fridged overnight before being churned via your method of choice. There's our beetroot ice cream, some matcha ice cream, some peanut butter ice cream for a peanuts flavor, caramelized onion ice cream, and tomato jam ice cream, each of which should be churned until it has the texture of soft serve, at which point we're going to scrape it back into a clean container, smooth it out, and let it camp out in the freezer again overnight. Then, about 1/2 hour before serving, we're going to transfer everybody over to the fridge so they can soften up a little bit for easy scooping. So here we go, 1 heaping scoop each of caramelized onion, tomato jam, and then to stand in for the peanut plant, you'll see that I did a kind of Neapolitan of beetroots, matcha, and peanut butter. Is it the prettiest thing in the world? No, but neither am I, and I'm okay with me. But is that all about to change as I dig into this insane mishmash of savory sweet ice creams? Let's find out. The caramelized onion was interesting, the tomato jam was interesting, and the beetroot matcha peanut butter was interesting. That's about the only thing I can say. They are inoffensive, but I wouldn't go so far as to call them good. I think what this thing needs is a little bit of the old-fashioned sundae treatment. Whipped cream, chocolate sauce, and a cherry. Now that is a sundae. Let's take a big old bite, and that is when I learned that chocolate and onions don't mix.
May I have that back, Annie? Thank you. And just to clarify, if you see this lying out, I'm still using it, so you don't have to take it to the kitchen, dump it out, and wash the bowl.
Is this about your buttered noodles?
I didn't say that.
I'm broke too, so I was gonna make him dinner tonight.
Cool. Double date. Dinner and 1993 interactive VCR game. What are you making?
Salmon. Buttered noodles.
Buttered noodles are my favorite.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're returning to the land of Community to take a look at buttered noodles. Now, something that you might not know about me that Abed and I have in common is that I love buttered noodles. I mean, come on, you got your noodles, you got your butter, and when the two come together, what's not to like? Like most of us, I grew up eating them as a child, but the love never went away, and I've gotten pretty good at it. But today, we're not just mixing noodles and butter, we're gonna try to take it to another level. Last week's episode rightly drew comparisons to the work of Claire Saffitz. So this week, I'm gonna go all BuzzFeed on your ass, and we're gonna try to make 3 different versions of buttered noodles. One that takes 5 minutes, one that takes 15 minutes, and one that takes 5 hours, times 5 minus 1, so 24 hours. First up, the version that you're probably picturing in your head when I say buttered noodles. Some lightly salted water brought to a boil, some egg noodles dumped into it, the noodles cooked per manufacturer's directions. Once tender, the noodles removed from the heat, drained, sometimes tragically rinsed with tap water, returned to the pot and mixed together with butter and salt. Maybe some ground black pepper if you're trying to evoke memories of your high school cafeteria. Mixed until the butter is melted and the seasonings dispersed throughout. Served either on its lonesome or as a base for other more flavorful dishes like pot roasts. And you're not going to hear me complain about this. This is what I grew up eating. It's buttered noodles. I like it. And now you're probably wondering, how is he going to jazz this up? Is he going to add Parmesan, as is so often suggested by online recipes? And the answer is no. If you add Parmesan to buttered noodles, you do not have buttered noodles anymore, my guy. You have a bitter, half-assed cacio e pepe. The problem with these noodles lies not in its simplicity, but in the bottom of the bowl, or the bottom of the pot, which you can see is slick with a sort of greasy, clarified butter. This is why you might think of buttered noodles as oily and bland. So where do we start with the improvements? First off, the pasta itself. Oh, we got ourselves a pasta drum solo going here. Somebody's seen Whiplash one too many times. But also a comparison of 2 common supermarket pastas. One of the many kitchen categories where you get what you pay for. Inexpensive pasta tends to be sort of smooth and shiny. It's cheaply made, so it has less texture and less flavor. Higher end pastas tend to look more like this. They have roughed up, textured exteriors indicating that they've been cut with a bronze dye. It's also likely, I apologize for my cuticles, I haven't been able to get a manicure in a while. This rough exterior and the slow drying process usually utilized in making gourmet pasta all translate to a better, tastier product, which is very important when we're making a dish with 2 ingredients. The other, of course, being butter. On the right, we have an unsalted bargain supermarket stick, and on the left, we have a fancy schmancy European block. Gourmet butter, just like pasta, can often cost twice as much as its less expensive counterparts. Can this extravagance really be worth it? The answer is yeah, big time. Bargain butter kind of tastes like pure plain fat, whereas the good stuff can taste sweet and tangy and grassy. There are a great many peoples that make beautiful, flavorful butter, and my top picks have got to go to Europeans, New Englanders, and blood of my blood, upstate New Yorkers. Not only does this butter taste great, it looks better. It's a golden yellow, indicating that it came from a happy, tasty, grass-fed cow. So let's put it to good work. You'll notice that I have a different shaped cooking vessel this time around. It's not totally necessary to utilize an oval-shaped Dutch oven, but it is spaghetti-shaped, so no more awkward maneuvering to get all the spaghetti down into the water. You'll also notice that I'm using a lot less water. That's because I want the water to get extra starchy. Right when the pasta's done, I'm going to grab about a half cup of it, set it aside, drain the pasta, return it unwashed to the still warm pot, add some of our delicious unsalted butter courtesy of upstate New York, about a quarter cup of our reserved pasta water, and a generous pinch of kosher salt. Then give it a very rigorous stir. Just like finishing the sauce for any pasta, we want the butter to emulsify with the pasta water, which instead of an oily mess is going to give us a nice creamy sauce. And doesn't that sound nicer than buttered noodles anyway? Pasta in butter sauce, or pasta al burro as the Italians call it. Either way, it's time to tuck into your bowl of better buttered noodles. I know these tips seem kind of obvious and simple, but we're talking about an obvious and simple dish here, and the only things that are going to elevate it are the simple things. I know it doesn't show up super well on camera, but it is straight up creamy, almost like it has a cream sauce or a cheese sauce on it. You can scoff if you want, but it's the same reason that people say their favorite food is bread and butter. When the simple things are done right, it just hits different. The only way we could possibly improve on that would be to make everything from scratch. So here we go. Now, I've made butter from scratch on this show before. Click the link in the upper right-hand corner if you want to see that. But the problem is I can't make better butter than these Frenchies. What I can do is culture their butter by making some creme fraiche. Here I am combining 4 cups of heavy cream with a half cup of cultured buttermilk. Tiny whisking to combine, covering and letting sit out at room temperature for 24 hours. 24 hours later, and it would seem like the only thing that's changed is my shirt, but looks can be deceiving. Let's give this a wiggle, shall we? Huh? As you can see, the culture from the buttermilk has thickened our heavy cream into a delicious, tangy soft serve known as creme fraiche. You could just put this stuff in a stand mixer or food processor and beat it into butter all on its own, but I'm going to add an equal part of room temperature European butter and whip together until all the milk fats separate from the newly minted buttermilk. Should only take about 15 seconds. And with that, we are left with a new butter, one with all the flavor of the European stuff and an added acidic tang from our creme fraiche. Once you've got your lump of butter, you need to wash it in ice water 4 or 5 times until the water squeezed out of the butter runs clear. Then just squeeze out all the water you can and this guy is ready for the fridge, and that's exactly where it's headed. We need cold butter to emulsify our sauce. Now onto the pasta. I want to capture the essence of that really good butter, really good sourdough eating experience. So I'm making an egg-based pasta out of about 80% 00 flour and about 20% rye flour, which is going to bring some of those nutty peasant loaf vibes. That's about 16 total ounces of flour, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and 3 large eggs. At first beaten into the flour with a fork and then kneaded for 8 to 10 minutes. And then this guy's going in either a zip top bag or plastic wrap for 30 minutes to rest before rolling and cutting. You could do this by hand, but if you have a pasta roller, it's obviously much easier not only to roll it out, but to laminate it. The essential gluten building process of rolling out, folding in thirds, and rolling out again 3 to 4 times. Then rolling out thinner and thinner until you've reached your desired thickness and cutting into fettuccine, which in order to prevent kinky pasta, we're not going to fold, but rather drape into a nest, placing on a floured baking sheet and keeping covered and refrigerated until ready to cook. Then placing again into a small amount of boiling water, and as it cooks for about 1.5 minutes, you can see there's a saute pan that I'm keeping warm on the side, not hot. I just want it warm enough that the pasta and the water and the butter do not cool off when I transfer them over. You could also use a large bowl that you've kept warm with boiling water, because our objective here is to combine our pasta, cultured butter, a little bit of pasta water, and kosher salt, and to toss everything together vigorously so as to aerate and emulsify the sauce, which by virtue of the speckled pasta is going to show you just how creamy this sauce gets. It's almost starting to look like an Alfredo. Go ahead and plate this however you like. I'm going to twist it into a little nest that I'm going to transfer over to a warm plate using a ladle carving fork combo. I'm going to top with a little dollop of our creme fraiche, and to really drive home the sourdough and butter eating experience, I'm going to steal a page from Riccardo Camanini's cookbook and top the pasta with a little bit of shaved fresh brewer's yeast, which is a little sweet, a little tangy, and dissolves on the tongue. That, along with a few twists of freshly ground black pepper, and folks, I think we got ourselves a winner here. This dish is creamy, nutty, sweet, tangy, earthy, buttery, rich, and toothsome. It is delicious. Is it worth all the extra effort? Debatable. As said before, this is a simple dish with simple ingredients and simple flavors, so when it's done right, it's a member of the Clean Plate Club and a dish worth rocking out over.
Casserole?
It's bagel bites and a deconstructed Hot Pocket reduction with a Doritos glaze. I just really want to make my food, you know?
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at Troy's Casserole from Community. A, shall we say, hearty affair cobbled together from these 3 familiar after-school snacks: Bagel Bites, Doritos, and Hot Pockets. Now, this has been an episode that's been requested since the very beginning of Binging with Babish, and it's one I've been avoiding because the prospect of creating a quote-unquote good version really scares the shit out of me. I know that Troy was just screwing around, but how does one make a Doritos glaze, or most confoundingly, deconstruct and reduce a Hot Pocket. To find out, I took one of these guys apart to see what makes them tick. And really, it's just a pastry shell containing a sort of sauce and cheese energy bar, one that I just can't recommend you eat frozen. But first things first, we gotta make the faithful recreation of the dish in question. Now, I figured the only way you could reduce a Hot Pocket was to let the sauce reduce a little bit, and the only way you're gonna be able to do that is to expose it to the air while it cooks. So into the bottom of a casserole dish goes 6 quite literally deconstructed Hot Pockets, which we are going to dot generously with pepperoni pizza bagel bites, turning each Hot Pocket into a little hot tub for 2. And lastly, the Doritos, which again I know were specified as a glaze, but in the show it just kind of looked like they were crumbled on top. So that's what I'm going to do, crumble a whole lot of Doritos on top until the bagel bites can no longer be seen. Cover and bake at 350 for about 30 minutes until piping hot throughout. And there you have it, Troy's casserole from Community. Only thing left to do now is give it a try. So I'm going to retrieve one of these Hot Pocket hot tubs, plate it up real nice, and tuck in. Now, I'm not going to be so snooty as to say that this is bad. I grew up eating all 3 of these things, just not at the same time, which admittedly makes them taste a little crazy. So let's see if we can set out to make a gourmet spiritual successor to Troy's casserole. I have here before me all the raw ingredients necessary to make from scratch each element of this dish. And I'm going to start with the deconstructed Hot Pocket reduction, which I think should be some kind of riff on tomatoes. Holy that was a totally unnecessary camera trick. Anyway, like I was saying, I'm going to focus mostly on the word reduction, which could be a sauce, but I'm going to interpret it as tomato confit, which are tomatoes that we're going to cut across into the bottoms of and then blanch, followed by a shock in ice water, which is going to give us the ability to easily remove their skins, just like we did in the Ratatouille episode. So just gently boil your tomatoes for about 30 seconds until the skins start to split and drop them in an ice bath. You'll notice that I'm doing this with a whole lot of tomatoes of different colors. That's because in an effort to make this dish as chefy as possible, I'm going to confit these tomatoes and then puree them, and then gelatinize those purees into a rainbow terrine. All those words will make sense in a few minutes. First, to confit the tomatoes, we're going to cut them into similar sized pieces and place them cut side down as crowded as possible on a rimmed baking sheet. For a little extra flavor, we're going to scatter some quartered shallots around the tomatoes as well as a few cloves of crushed garlic. And then confit is a cooking method where you cook the food in question in a whole lot of fat, so we're going to drizzle these generously with olive oil, followed by a generous pinch of kosher salt and a few twists of freshly ground black pepper. Then these guys are headed into a 225-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 4 hours, during which time we're going to get started on our Doritos flavors. First, some sliced red and green bell peppers are headed into the dehydrator. And you remember those tomato skins that you saved? You didn't save those? Why not? They are just packed with tomato flavor, and they're very easy also to dehydrate. We're also going to do some sliced onions, some sliced garlic, all the major flavor players in Doritos. They're headed into a 125-degree Fahrenheit dehydrator for at least 16 hours. Well, before then, our confit tomatoes emerge from the oven looking pretty good. And now to gelatinize and terrinify them, we need some gelatin. 4 packets of unflavored gelatin that we're going to sprinkle over a half cup of water. Then we're going to slowly pour in an additional half cup of hot water while tiny whisking constantly until completely dissolved. This is going to be our primary solidifier. Now I want to assemble my terrine in 4 layers, sort of like a tomato rainbow. So I'm going to start with all my greenest tomatoes, to which I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of our gelatin mixture, and we're going to pulse them together in a food processor until relatively smooth. We're then going to pour the mixture into a plastic wrap lined loaf pan, tap it a few times to make sure that it's even, and refrigerate for 1 hour or until relatively solidified. Then we're going to repeat the process this time with the yellowy tomatoes, carefully pouring over the rounded back of a spoon atop our green tomatoes to make sure that it doesn't disturb the first layer. Back into the fridge for an hour, and then we're rinsing and repeating with our 2 remaining layers, orange and red. I know this isn't making a whole lot of sense, but you'll see where I'm going with it. Once the terrine is filled, we're going to cover it with plastic wrap and refrigerate for at least 6 hours or until completely solidified throughout. I'm going to go get some sleep, and I'll see you guys after the commercial break. The next day, and all of our dried vegetables emerge from the dehydrator looking pretty dehydrated. Just make sure that once they've cooled off, they're brittle and easily snap when snapped. Then, one at a time, we're using a spice grinder to grind all the vegetables into their powdered form. I ground up some Fresno chilies too, just in case we want to do a spicy sweet chili flavor, but this proved rather noxious. Luckily, you've probably got one of these lying around. This is probably also going to be the point during the voiceover that you remember that Claire Saffitz already did Doritos dust, and you probably could have just copied her method, but but just push those feelings down and let's start adding ingredients in the order that they are on the ingredients list. That is a teaspoon each salt, cheddar powder, buttermilk powder, and Romano cheese powder, then a half teaspoon each of your homemade garlic powder, tomato powder, red pepper powder, and green pepper powder. Go ahead and give that a tiny whisking until homogeneous, and it's not quite red enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more red pepper powder and tomato powder until it at least looks like a distant cousin of a Doritos dust. And I gotta say, it tastes pretty good. Not exactly like Doritos, but pretty close, and more than close enough for our purposes. Next up, the bagel element, and since I wanted this to be a kind of plated up fork and knife vibe, I thought a savory donut might be a better direction. So into the bowl of a stand mixer goes 350 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of salt, a teaspoon and a half of instant yeast, and a tablespoon of cornmeal to bring back some of that corn chip flavor. I'm also going to grate in 4 ounces of Parmesan cheese, which I think is going to lend a delightful cheesiness to our donut. Set that aside. In a smaller bowl, we're combining 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk with 2 tablespoons of unsalted melted butter and 1 large egg. Beat these guys up with a tiny whisk until combined, and then it's time to bring it all together. Pour the wet ingredients into a well formed in the center of the dry ingredients. Attach your favorite dough hook to your favorite stand mixer. Drop the head, crank it on medium-low speed. Remember that you didn't plug it in. That was embarrassing. Glad nobody saw that. And start mixing this guy on medium-low speed and let him go for about 5 minutes until everybody comes together into a cohesive mass of dough. Then let the machine knead the dough for 1 to 2 minutes until it's nice and smooth. Retrieve it from the bowl and give it a few ancillary kneads just to make sure that it's all nicely kneaded, and then return it to the bowl, which we have generously oiled, and then wrap it in plastic wrap and let it rise at room temperature for 1 to 1.5 hours, or until doubled in size. Do that little hands thing you do when you come back and see something's risen. Let the dough know who's boss and punch it down, and then turn it out onto a well-floured work surface, where we are going to roll it out to a thickness of about half an inch. Use this time to ponder whether or not you're making the right decision by swapping donuts for bagels. Push those feelings down and begin using a donut cutter to cut your dough into donuts. And just in case these look too donut-like, I'm going to make a few custom jobs where I cut out a smaller hole so it more closely resembles a bagel. We are then laying these guys out onto a parchment-lined rim baking sheet, lightly oiling a few sheets of food-grade plastic wrap, and then draping said plastic wrap in a frankly very graceful motion over our soon-to-be donuts. After they've rested for about 30 minutes at room temperature, that is. Then they are headed directly into some 350-degree Fahrenheit vegetable oil, where we're going to fry them for about 90 seconds per side until they're puffed up and golden brown and crisp. Drain them on a wire rack, set in a rimmed baking sheet, and immediately sprinkle with kosher salt as soon as they come out the oil. And there you have it, some Parmesan cornmeal donuts, which don't taste half bad. They're a little boring, but as the knife and fork basis for our pizza flavors, they're going to be kind of perfect. So next up, it has been many hours, and our terrine is...
Hey, listen, is your mouth tiny and small? Then why don't you come down a little bit? Where the food is tiny. It looks like regular food, but really tiny. It's just tiny and fits right in. Fits right in. We got tiny of lasagna, tiny pizza, tiny pie. Little tiny fried eggs.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at little bits. It's food that's real tiny and small, and oh shit, we got a tiny whisk. Okay, Andy, leave the silly voices to the professionals. This is Tiny Whisk's moment to shine, and he's going to be joined by some tiny friends. First up, tiny lasagna, for which we're going to need some fresh pasta so we can roll it out really super thin. I'm just going to warn you guys that I'm going to make tiny foods out of normal-sized batches, so please don't be mad at me. I figured this is what they would do in the restaurant business anyway, so if anything, I'm being accurate, right? Anyway, back to the actual cooking. As you can see, we're beating 3 large eggs and a little bit of kosher salt into probably about 14 ounces of all-purpose flour, using a bench scraper and ultimately our hands to bring it all together into a smooth, cohesive ball that we're going to knead until it just comes together, and then we're going to put it in a plastic bag or wrap it in plastic wrap and let it rest for 5 minutes. Don't waste all that extra flour. We're going to need it later, so just sift it out before retrieving our now nicely relaxed ball of dough, which is now going to be a lot easier to knead for 7 to 8 minutes until super smooth and taut. Now we're going to place it back in the plastic bag and let it rest for 30 minutes, just enough enough time to get started on a tiny batch of sauce. Into our smallest saute pan goes about a tablespoon of olive oil, a quarter shallot, and half a clove of garlic grated on our very smallest grater. Mix it around with our tiny spatula before adding about a cup of tomato puree. Mix everybody together, lower the heat, and then we're going to add a little tiny pinch of oregano, a tiny pinch of dried basil, and an extra tiny pinch of crushed red pepper flake. Any more than 1 or 2 flakes and this is going to come out really spicy. Bring this to a bare simmer and let it go for about half an hour until nice and thick and the tomato's acidity has mellowed. Then we're headed back over to the worktop where we're going to start rolling out our pasta. First we're going to divide the dough into 4 equally sized pieces, set it onto a well-floured surface, and roll it out using the smallest rolling pin you can find, just thin enough that it can pass through the widest setting on your pasta roller. Then through said widest setting, we're going to start rolling out the sheet of dough, folding the dough into thirds and rolling it back out and passing it through 2 times in order to laminate the dough and build up the gluten network, which is going to help our pasta turn out a bit more toothsome. Then, 1 notch at a time on the pasta roller, we're going to roll the dough out thinner and thinner until it's as thin as nature will allow, and the ghostly specter of your hand can be seen through it when held up to the light. And now I had to craft a sort of tiny lasagna pan for which I thought this box of tea would make a good template. I'm using aluminum foil here because it's the best option I have, but take note that you generally don't want to cook lasagna or any tomato-based food in aluminum. It's perfectly safe, but aluminum is what's known as a reactive cookware, and any especially acidic foods like tomatoes cooked for more than 30 minutes can pick up a sort of off metallic taste. But for our purposes today, this little guy is going to work just fine. I'm going to start by laying down a little smear of tomato sauce. This is going to sort of act like a protective glue for our bottom lasagna noodle, which I'm going to cut using this tiny pizza cutter and the tea box as a template, so as the noodles will fit inside our lasagna pan like a noodly glove. Then I'm going to spread a little bit more sauce on top of this first noodle, grab my tiny block of low moisture mozzarella out of the freezer, and introduce you to the tiny cheese grater. Somebody gave this to me while I was on my book tour, and it's been waiting in my drawer to make its auspicious debut. So I'm just going to grate a layer of mozzarella in there, followed by a layer of ricotta cheese, applied of course with a tiny spoon. I'm not usually a ricotta in my lasagna kind of guy, I'm more of a bechamel stud, but I want to keep this as classic as possible. And to top the ricotta goes a little grating of Parmesan cheese. And now, since I'm sure you want to see what the hell's going on in here, I've got some amateur iPhone footage of the scene. As you can see, I'm laying a noodle down atop our cheese and sauce, topping that noodle with another tiny spoonful of sauce, and repeating the process for as many layers as the lasagna pan will support. In my case, I got about 4 full layers in there. Then on top goes a little bit more sauce and Parmesan, and this guy is ready for the oven, or rather the toaster oven. And just like any lasagna, we want to bake it covered for the first 30 or so minutes of baking, so as to prevent the top noodle from drying out and the cheese from burning. This guy's headed into a 325 degree Fahrenheit toaster oven for about 25 minutes before we take it out, remove